Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and today we're going down the Chip Chan rabbit hole for the last time. Now ladies and gentlemen, Chip Chan was something that I covered years ago. Actually 3 years ago was when I first went into the rabbit hole. But of course in 2020, just 2 years ago almost, I ended up actually going and reporting that Chip Chan had gone missing. Now Chip Chan, for a lot of you who don't know as a quick primer, is an individual that's been streaming for over 12 years at this point. And they were streaming, basically them inside their house, and basically documenting their, I guess you could say, torture from the police, from an individual known as P, and the fact that they were suffering from a mind control weapon. There was a lot to question in regards to mental health, and that's something we're going to cover into later on. I want to start off by saying that nobody should interact with Chip Chan. You should not go to the YouTube channel, you should not white knight, you should not jump into the scenario and try to, you should not jump in and interact at all. Realistically, the only people that can interact are Chip Chan's inner circle, Chip Chan's closest friends, and their support network, and if anything, the South Korean authorities and their mental health services, if they choose to intervene. By going in yourself, you're actually exacerbating the situation, so don't do it. Now, when I said Chip Chan had gone missing, Chip Chan had basically stopped live streaming, and for a while there was almost nothing being uploaded. I mean, initially I kind of thought at the time that maybe something terrible had happened. But Chip Chan is completely back to YouTube, actually uploading underneath Mind Control Weapon, or Weapon Mind Control, whatever the channel may be. Now, this channel definitely makes me dry heave, and the reason I'm making this video is Chip Chan is back. Now, instead of live streaming, Chip Chan has been uploading videos constantly on YouTube, all about her various skin conditions, the fact that the Korean police are acting up using that alleged mind control weapon. And some of these show severe skin rashes all over her. On an extreme level, the amount of rashes, the burning rashes that have been happening are severe, and it's to a point that some have speculated that Chip Chan is going through some level of sepsis, maybe early stage diabetes. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, I've only been really relaying what the general speculations are. Now this has been going on for a while, months if anything. But Chip Chan has been able to go outside, constantly recording South Korean police, just basically documenting her interactions with them. You can see the South Korean police are just driving by in this YouTube short. Even beyond that, there's times where she'll stalk the South Korean police or their various vehicles that are parked around all over the city. So for instance, here she is walking around in the city, taking photos of their various squad cars, their patrol vehicles, rolling around in the area. In the easiest, most palatable video one can watch about these skin conditions, you can see that she is documenting all of the various problems that are occurring, at least from her perspective, the mind control weapon that is implanted into her foot. According to Chip Chan's own post, the mind control weapon is rather interesting. It regards people being implanted by the FBI, the CIA, the Pentagon, if you will, and once they're unconscious, they'll have this implanted onto them, into their cartilage, below on, in this case, the right foot. Now, of course, the mind control weapon can do a whole host of things, and if this looks familiar to you, it's kind of like technologies like voice to skull, where the government can send, or allegedly send, actual messages to somebody's head. People who suffer from, notions of paranoia, or those who believe to be subjects of targeted harassments, are those that oftentimes look into things like this and, bring them out to the world, or sort of propagate them, if you will. Now, the mind control weapon in this case is believed to be the Vera chip, basically this little tiny chip that's when put alongside a grain of rice, a single grain of rice, you can see that this is a really, really small device that can be implanted underneath somebody's skin, and it can serve as an, RFID chip. It can serve as, a GPS tracker, if you will. Actually, there's a really good analysis and an explanation by a governmental website as well, from the National Library of Medicine, where the Vera chip is a radio frequency identification tag produced commercially for implantation in human beings. Its proposed uses include identification of medical patients, physical access control, contactless retail payment, and even the tracing of kidnapped victims. As the author explains, the Vera chip is vulnerable to simple over-the-air spoofing attacks. In particular, an attacker capable of scanning a Vera chip, eavesdropping on its signal, or simply learning its serial number can create a spoof device whose radio appearance is indistinguishable from the original. But of course, that's just talking about one of the weaknesses onto it. The Vera chip is a commercially produced human implantable microchip. Now, it's the same chip, or something similar to it, an analog if you will, that is believed by Chip Chan to cause her severe distress, those pains, those various rashes she believes. Now, of course, whether this is true or not isn't really up for us to really ask. For somebody like Chip Chan who's going through a severe amount of mental health issues, none of them properly diagnosed last I checked. People believe she has paranoid schizophrenia, which I don't necessarily doubt. I'm not in the realm of not believing that. Again, nothing here is confirmed. In this case, I can obviously see that for her, she believes, this to exist in her head. For her, it's about as real as this monitor or this camera or all of you or these lights, okay? For her, this illness and what she's going through is absolutely real. And that is, without a doubt, completely terrifying. Now, of course, for Chip Chan, she was first discovered in 2008 around in a 4chan thread where basically people were looking through internet webcams or open source webcams. Now, for those of you who don't know what an open source webcam is, there's plenty of webcams you can find online that you can just pop into and watch. For instance, one of these sites is Instacam, which is where you can find directories of just cameras all over the world. So, for instance, one in Spain, one of them in Taiwan, one of them in Tokyo, Japan. For instance, this one in a box, this is a 24/7 live stream of a box with a giant squirrel. And it is in fact active. It's updating like every other second. You can literally see the pixels change. Of course, there's other websites where you can actually go, like Webcam Taxi, where people get like virtual travel. So for instance, in the case of this video, you can jump into Busan Jingu Skyline Camera. So click on this webcam over here, and it just loads a webcam view. So if you just load in, it loads a literal webcam view of South Korea, and you can like scroll all the way back and get like a time lapse of just this section of Busan. Here's like another shot of it too, so it's like a full traffic cam that one can view, and some of these are straight up on YouTube for anybody to watch. Of course, Chip Chan was one of many people that was streaming, but her case was a little bit different because people had come across and seen that she was basically sleeping like this. This was the general live streams that you could witness at the time. She was just laying in her bed for hours on end, and nobody would really come to visit her. And from what it seems, she set it up all by herself. This is all that she did. All of those rooms that she was in contained signs written in Korean, streams where there were a bunch of audio clips, and all the time she was talking about a character known as P, and always mentioning the mind control weapon implanted, what was believed to be in her foot, causing her severely poor health as per her perception. Now, from what I understand, Chip Chan's been living like this since 1996. And look, I was born in May 1st, 1994. To think that I'm as old as someone's distress like this, like my lifespan mirrors almost this person's entire distress, living like this, is absolutely shocking and scary indeed. And nobody really knew about this until like 2008 when it started actually popping up on the Chans, which is why she's known as Chip Chan, right? Which is, they put the Chan suffix and then, whatever the first name they want to apply. I mean, in a lot of cases, this is the general live streams. You'd see her eating, drinking, just living like this entirely. There was literally nothing else going on. This was going on for hours upon hours every single day. She was documenting her abuse by this P character for the world to see and the world to witness. Chip Chan also ran a bunch of blogs too, detailing her run-in with law enforcement, and she really did not have a good connection with South Korean police. So of course, some of her posts, these are official posts, WordPress blogs that she had run, and this is from like 2011, where she would go out and photograph these law enforcement officers in South Korea. And in certain cases, obviously they're ignoring it, and of course it's severe distress. What'll happen is they will whip out their own cell phones and capture them too. You can actually see how old this is given the fact that they're whipping out the flip phones just to capture this kind of stuff too. And of course, the law enforcement is doing it so they can have documented evidence because she was probably being a little bit stressful at the time. Now, P in this case is a very real character to Chip Chan, who is apparently the police officer that has kept her completely hostage in her house for all of these years, at least as far as I know, since like 2006, when apparently she had that Vera-chip implanted in her foot, the mind control weapon. He can control Chip Chan's thoughts, activate outbreaks on her skin, see through her eyes, and make her fall unconscious at any time he wants. Through these abilities, he is holding Chip Chan hostage in her home. Now, do we know what P looks like? We have no idea, really. We really don't know if this character even actually exists in the real world. What it is definitely a representation of the police system that's keeping her inside, at least in her perception. On this channel, one of the most popular live streams for 18,000 viewers at least on 18th January of 2018, which again isn't really even that long ago. It's just shortly pre-pandemic. You can literally see that she's just sitting in her house, and this is streamed for hours on end, for the world to consistently see. I mean, the house is literally labeled and just signs are put up everywhere. Clocks are put up around over here to show you how live it is and what's going on. This is clearly a scenario where, like, you know, nobody has jumped into it. Nobody walks into this area. She is left basically completely alone in this scenario, as far as I've ever been able to tell, for hours at a time living like this. Now, compared to some of those earlier rashes, the current scenario regarding her body looks a little bit better, at least from now. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Chip Chan has in fact seen a doctor, which is one of the positives in this entire thing. For instance, one of her posts was, in the description at least, "You can endure pain, but can't endure itching." So again, so much itchy all over my body, buttocks, back, and pelves. I apply very strong ointment, which was prescribed, but P uses mind control weapon. It becomes useless. Scabs, removed by P. It looks fine, but it's getting worse. Force removing the densely formed scabs. P reads my thoughts about filming a video of leg scabs, equals he took off them after making me unconscious. Force taking off scabs had damaged my skins more, endless discharge secreted from the wound dried up and hardened into scabs on my legs. After implanting heat rash causing mind control weapon, it looked horrible. When I decided to take a video to upload, he took the scabs off after making me unconscious. My legs were covered by the scabs, and I tried to take a video closely of the scabs, but he removed them. He tortures me with maximum level of itch, pin tingling, all prickling. P is losing the swelling using mind control weapon. So again, P is very much a real character for her, and she is living with this for years on end. Now again, one of the big important things, like I said earlier, is not to involve yourself into the story. No amount of white knighting is ever going to help the situation, and various people have tried to jump into this in a very, very intense way. One of the posts, and I showed this last time, was by a Redditor who's like, "Hi all, I've been following Chip for years. Since before I even went to college, I'm surprised that nobody has ever actually just went over to save her. She would feel lower than dirt for not actually just tracking her. We should feel lower than dirt for not actually just tracking her down and talking some sense into her. She is a charming girl, and frankly, I would marry her to give her US citizenship and become her legal guardian." It's very weird. I'm willing to fly to Korea alone if someone can help me with relevant information, address any possible tips. I personally don't speak Korean, but as Chip speaks English, I'm hoping to get by with some very serious Duolingo Korean cramming. But if other people want to join me, the more the merrier. Never, ever do this for somebody going through this. Realistically, the only people that can ever handle this are trained professionals, especially in the mental health field, and very trained law enforcement officers and social workers are the only people capable of dealing with this in a professional manner. Just any random person going into this almost serves to exacerbate situations like this, which is, there should be no reason anybody should jump into this and choose to be the sole hero. Leave this stuff to the professionals. Now, where the story ends is in a bit of a sad scenario, and where this rabbit hole comes to a conclusion is when you look into the mental health history of South Korea. Now, South Korea is not a country that's known for the best practices in mental health. You know, oftentimes when you hear about the failings of South Korea, you might look into things like economic disparity. But as South Korea has gotten its economy up, as South Korea has, brought its people to the forefront, the problem with the South Korean work life and income inequality is that a lot of these things lead to mental health problems, depression, some of the highest rates of suicide in the known, first world. So, for instance, in the Harvard International Review, which actually goes more into depth regarding this, you can see that despite the national mental health crisis, the problem is rarely discussed and often neglected in South Korean society. Many South Koreans often describe discussions of mental health as taboo, a mindset deeply rooted in the public conscience, making mental health awareness and advocacy work by South Korean physicians largely ineffectual. The reality plays out in daily life. Only 20% of South Koreans seek out mental health care when they are depressed, and nearly 75% of South Korean elderly individuals suggest that depression and other mental health problems are a sign of weakness. The drivers of the problem are diverse, but many point to the increasingly competitive and stressful culture regarding work, life, and family in South Korea. Young people in particular face an unemployment rate that is 3 times higher than the national average, even before the pandemic. Along with a massive housing crunch around the capital, Seoul, such a crisis has led nearly 40% of young people to stop seeking work. This is absolutely terrible, not just from the forget the economic implications. Mental health is something that's not looked carefully all over the world. I would argue even in Canada, even in the United States, even in, the United Kingdom, even in places where we have all these faculties available, oftentimes even we consider this stuff to be a little bit taboo. It's a lot harder for people to even talk about mental health. I'll say it as somebody from an Indian household. Talking about mental health is very difficult. In fact, I would say I'm one of the lucky people in my culture because my dad, being a doctor, has always talked about the benefits of mental health and why you got to take care of it. Him being a doctor knew that was very important. But a lot of us still also consider it taboo, like the South Koreans do as well. It's just one of those things that's not talked about. And, obviously people talk about taking care of your physical health, very important. But if you can't take care of your mental health, that'll absolutely leave you crippled and absolutely leave you in a situation like Chip Chan. Chip Chan is a very extreme end of where the mental health has not been taken care of. I can't say she's a paranoid schizophrenic. She's not diagnosed with it. But clearly, there are some mental health issues left. And unfortunately, in South Korea's case, it doesn't seem like she is ever going to get that help that she truly deserves. She's just sort of left inside her house. I'm sure she might have some social welfare coming to check up on her from now and then, but that only goes so far. Now, from this one thing, the Korea Biomedical Review, which from what I understand is a medical blog, the thing around here with the stigma around mental health is improving. So, for instance, I think people are more open to mental health treatment now because there's too much stress. People are reaching a limitation and dealing with it by themselves. In the past, people went to a psychiatrist as a last resort after trying everything else. Nowadays, people get treatment before their symptoms get worse. Some people go to get help even if they don't have a significant problem, which is of course very good. Getting it early and taking care of it on is great. But they also describe the cultural basis too. I think the high barrier of getting mental health treatment here has a lot to do with our Confucian culture, and that emphasizes individual will, spiritual strength, and self-discipline. One of the most respected historical figures in our country, Admiral Yi Sun-shin, is well known for saying, "Those who seek death shall live, those who seek life shall die." Buddhism from the Silla dynasty also has a proverbial saying, "Il she yu sim jo," that roughly translates into everything comes from the mind. These thoughts are embedded in our culture. Now, of course, obviously in South Korea's case, ladies and gentlemen, mental health is one of those things that's highly stigmatized. And even though that great advancements have been done, unfortunately, there's a lot of ways to go there. One of the real depressing parts about Chip Chan's story is she is one of many individuals, not just in South Korea, but all over the world. The only reason we're talking about Chip Chan, and the only reason she's in the radar, is because she was the only one uploading her condition onto the internet, which is already incredibly rare. If somebody is diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, as far as I've always understood, they don't really want the world to know. But of course, Chip Chan is documenting her situation because she's going through what she believes to be a very scary, real situation of forced imprisonment. Now, how real is that, from the outside looking in? Obviously, trained professionals have to go there and take care of the situation. Now, of course, in South Korea's case, who knows how much of that is actually happening? Like I said earlier, she probably has a social aid worker that checks in every now and then. Maybe a neighbor that's really, careful. But there's no, expectation in the country, or there's probably no, long-term care in that situation, especially for somebody like this. What's scary is she's been going through this for years, and her situation probably mirrors that of tons of other people. But the only difference is we know of her and we don't know of them. Mental health is an incredibly serious thing, and going down the Chip Chan rabbit hole is one of the things that's made me absolutely be an advocate for things like mental health and absolutely promoting taking care of it the most. Because in reality, most people often overdo look it, and there is a big stigma around it, a very big stigma that still exists to this day. Had Chip Chan not had to face such a stigma, and the country had taken its mental health stuff even serious, I don't even think Chip Chan would have ever been a rabbit hole to go down on. She might have gotten the help she would have deserved a long time ago. But for now, this is a scenario where she consistently will update the entire internet about this situation that only seems to be exacerbating because there's nothing to come into it and talk her down, or at least logically guide her down a way that's more fit for her mental state. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chip Chan rabbit hole has come to an end. There's not much more to gain out of it, which is the last time I'm ever going to be talking about this subject, unless something serious comes on, or the best positive news comes out that she actually has gotten the help that she deserves from the South Korean government. But I think this serves as a real cautionary tale as to why mental health is incredibly important, and why you should absolutely take care of yourself, and you should absolutely take care of the people around you if you ever notice them suffering through scenarios like this. Symptoms like this, or even symptoms that are 99% lighter than this even too. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an extreme end of the mental health spectrum that we've seen in the most negative way. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, as always, I hope the best for her. Again, I want to stress by saying, please do not get involved. Don't jump in and try to be some savior. Leave this stuff to the professionals. But of course, Chip Chan's story kind of just ends over here. There's nothing much more to talk about. And ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar. And if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I